Live from SABC studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, welcome to this week's first edition of the Watchdog. My name is Zwakele Mncwango, and on the show tonight,
we affirm our support of programs and the people, public, private, civic, academic, multilateral partnerships that are carried out towards the realization of the capabilities of prospects of each and every South African.
We'll speak to the Minister of Social Development about government thinking around the country's welfare system. We'll also speak to the DA's Zwakele Mncwango after making a decision to dump the party that has been his political home for the past 22 years. But we start here. Government wants a quick end to the Transnet strike. The Minister of Employment and Labour has joined the wage talks as an observer. The Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration is now mediating the wage impasse between Transnet and the unions. About 40,000 members of the United National Transport Union and the SA Transport and Allied Workers Union have downed tools.
The parties at the Transnet Bargaining Council, including Labour Minister Thula Singesi, want a speedy resolution to the strike action, saying the longer it drags on, the more it will be destructive to the country's economy.
It's disappointing that we've not been able to reach an agreement, because a strike in this particular sector has a huge impact on the economy as a whole. In fact, the damage it can do is incalculable. Our economy, which is in any case weak at this stage, is trying to recover in terms of the exports and so on. So it was just an appeal. I will be monitoring this. We are speaking with the Minister of the Public Enterprises, Minister Pravin Gordhan, and we will ensure that there must be a resolution out of this.
Today saw SATAU members join rival union UNTU to down tools countrywide amid calls for the employer to do right by them.
We're demanding 13%, or at least if the employer can come down, can meet us halfway. Maybe if he can offer us 12%, maybe we can accept that 12%.
It's not enough. How much is 3% of a general worker? We really can't accept that. Due to the cost of living, everyone is affected.
They come with a 1.5% increase or a 3% increase that's been watered down, where none of your pension or your housing allowance or your medical aid is going to be lifted as well.
Workers' unions want the employer to reconsider his stance. The striking workers say months of negotiations with the employer have not yielded positive outcomes.
The employer has unreasonably rejected to sign the picketing rules, and then subsequent to that we have requested the intervention of the CCMA to address two issues. First issue is the picketing rules. The second issue, it is a CCMA intervention towards wage negotiation.
The United National Transport Union UNTU is a majority union at Transnet with around 54% of the staff. The union has welcomed the presence of government at the wage talks.
We appreciate that the Minister took time out of his busy schedule to come and brief us this morning. He has addressed us on the urgency of this matter and trying to find a resolution for this. He's highlighted the impact and the severe effect that this has on the economy of South Africa, and has implored the parties to try and find solutions and approach this with open minds with the intent to find a solution soon.
Transnet says its main aim is to see the strike action lifted so workers can go back to their posts. Growth in the third quarter is expected to show some improvement following a contraction in the second quarter. However, the strike action is already disrupting the movements of imports and exports of goods, and this will have a catastrophic impact on economic growth and job creation.
It's unfortunate that we're at this point now, because we want to avoid mass industrial action on our part as a business. We know that we are under pressure operationally and financially, and for us we would like to conclude these talks that are happening currently as swiftly as possible so that we can get back to the business of moving the economy, which is what our mandate is.
The unions, Transnet and government are all in agreement that the strike action at Transnet has the potential to disrupt an economy that is ailing, a move that will see billions in losses and more jobs lost as industries shut down. Katlego Lorodi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Special Investigating Unit wants to recover close to 800,000 rands from Zilwa Trading. The company apparently overcharged the Mpumalanga Department of Social Development for COVID-19 personal protective equipment in 2020. The SIU says prices were inflated and not in line with National Treasury's recommended prices. The matter is being heard at a special tribunal sitting in the Mpumalanga High Court in Mbombela.
Another PPE scandal. Zwakele Trading is accused of overpricing its PPE items to the Department of Social Development at the height of COVID-19 pandemic. The SIU investigators told the special tribunal that the company allegedly charged more than 2 times the amount set out in the National Treasury guidelines. This is for items such as surgical masks and gloves, and the SIU wants to recover the funds.
They have instituted civil recovery proceedings with the special tribunal to recover an estimated amount of 800,000 rand that is alleged to have been overcharged by a service provider in the name of Zwakele Trading. Various allegations have been made relating to the irregularities, relating to the manner in which this procurement was done, and as such, the application before the special tribunal was to review and set aside as well as to recover the amounts.
Zwakele Trading has denied the allegations, saying there were no guidelines at the time when they did business with the department.
So because there were no prices regulated, he was entitled to issue those quotations. However, we believe that the instruction note that came into effect from the 15th of April 2020, that one prescribed regulated prices, and you have seen that, or we're saying that all the quotations that were issued by our client after that date were in line. 5 witnesses are expected to testify in the week-long trial before Judge Lebogang Modiba makes a ruling. Tumela Machogo, SABC News in Mbombela.
The number of beneficiaries of the Social Relief of Distress Grant has dropped. Nearly 7.5 million people are now receiving the grant, which was introduced during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Social Development Minister and the South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, updated the media today on the relief and top-up grants for orphans. About 10 million unemployed South Africans benefited from the 350 rands COVID-19 grant. Following the lifting of the national state of disaster in March, the government had to introduce new regulations. SASSA CEO Dotsi Mamela Kumbula said this included, among others, refining all accounts to ensure the right people are in fact paid. I am joined now by the Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu, on the line to talk more about these and other measures they plan to introduce to our social welfare system. Minister, good evening. Finally, we've got you. Not the ideal line we would have wanted to have, but we'll have to do with what we have. Good evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Vuyo, and my apology for I was joined already, but for some reason I got cut, so we're going to have to use the line without the video. But as long as I'm here, I wish to thank you for the opportunity. So it's a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. The government has eased the qualification criteria to allow for more people to receive the 350 rands social relief grant. Remind us, perhaps, First Minister, as to why, in the first place, or what was the reason for changing the qualification criteria?
We We changed, no, we did not change the qualification criteria, Vuyo. Let us also just make that straight, that the qualification criteria did not change. It was a threshold that changed, which had been at 350. Then we had to keep it up, because when we find that people have got a particular amount of money into their account, we take it that either people have gone back to work or they are having some other income. And then we realized that if the threshold was left as that, many beneficiaries of the old order, which was the old iterations that we had, ended up not being able to apply. So we had to lift the threshold to that 640 so that we can enable people to apply and they are not lost in the system because we're thinking that they're getting money when actually they are not getting any money from anywhere.
Well, I mean, activists and other people who are in this space did say this right at the beginning, that it was wrong to, stay at 350 when the poverty line was hovering around 624 rands per month.
Remember, Vuyo, that it's not like there is a bottomless pit of money that sits somewhere. We were given only a 44 billion to make sure that we cover the next tranche. And therefore, for us, we needed to make sure that we stay within that limit, because, again, if you go above the money that you've been given, becomes a problem, because then you make promises to people that you cannot keep, firstly. But secondly, we also needed to make sure that we pay people who still deserve to be paid because they don't have anything. A few people have either gone back to work and therefore they are now getting salaries. And so when we check back through our system of ensuring that through the tax system, we check that people are now getting salaries, or we check on any other. Because remember, Vuyo, while we are giving the 350 because people were unemployed and so forth, there were others who either got back into one system or the other, including those who were at home but were applying for NSFAS and other forms of social relief, not social relief, but grants that government had to give them. We can't have people double dipping. We need to make sure that the people that we are paying the 350 are the people who absolutely have nothing and are not getting anything from anywhere, and also because they do not have jobs and they can't go back to jobs.
But then can you vouch for your systems, because you also want to avoid the danger of disadvantaging deserving people, but because perhaps a relative deposits, we've had those stories of relatives depositing money into their accounts to take care of siblings and so on, and that is seen to be someone's earnings, when in fact it is not. They are simply conduits because relatives are trying to, and friends are trying to support them. So you had to then have very strong systems to make sure that you actually cater for those possibilities.
Yes, it is a very painful process, I must tell you. Because sometimes you create systems in order to make sure that you also protect the taxpayers' money, because when all is said and done, we also have to be accountable for money that's given to us. We have the Auditor General that audits us, and when the auditor finds that there's money that went to people who were not supposed to get the money, we're the one who get into trouble. It is painful, obviously, because you need to put strict systems in place, but at the same time, you have to be sensitive to the fact that many of these people who applied actually do not have anything. At the same time, you also need to make sure that there are no sources along the line, some of the sources who are within our own systems itself, just to make sure that it's not the wrong people who get the money. And of course, it's, like I say, it's a pain when some people who are supposed to get the money are delayed and they've got absolutely nowhere else to go. I think that our systems are now up and running to a point where people are getting the money. And for those who are not getting the money, who were supposed to, remember we did say
If you applied, you qualified, at the particular point where you qualified and you didn't get your money, we will backdate you to the time that you qualified for the social relief of distress grant.
But are you able to say here tonight, Minister, that all those problems that people were encountering, complaining about, and not getting a great deal of help in many instances are now over? In other words, you've built resilience into your systems.
Yes. Sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. So I'm saying, are you able to say that without any fear of contradicting yourself tomorrow?
No, yes, I have, without any fear of contradicting myself, that those systems, particularly the issue of the threshold, as others had come to us and said, this threshold is going to give you a problem, we listened to that, we made sure that we increase the threshold and so on. And I am saying that the systems are now in place, but this does not necessarily mean to say that if there's a problem in the system because some of the beneficiaries are not giving us the right information. For instance, some bank details sometimes are not right. Some people change their bank details. You know, we are using a system. And when you confuse the system, in many instances, it ends up affecting other areas. So it's our plea to our beneficiaries. Please use your own cell phone. Please make sure that you give us the right information as far as your banking details are concerned, so that we don't have to be coming back and forth asking you to correct those.
Now, you've also topped up the child support grant. Now, when one looks at the pronouncements that you made today, they then go back and, as you were saying earlier, that there is no bottomless pit, so to speak. I mean, the money you have, I mean, the money the state has in its custody has to go to a whole lot of other things. Now, if we're looking at 30% of the population receiving all manner of grants, you know, from disability grants, pensions, and now the social relief of distress grant and many others. There's been this argument that this is an unsustainable situation. What you are talking about today takes the number or the percentage of South Africans who are dependent on one form of grant or another to about 40% of the population, which critics are saying is simply unaffordable. I'm keen to know what the conversations are, you know, within government around the entire social development system.
Let us start, Vuyo, by stating as a matter of fact that the 18 million people that normally get the social grant, that we've never tampered with, which is the old age grant, the child support grant, the grant for people, for persons with disability. Those were grants which have been there since 1994, which have covered all our people from old age to child support grants to people with disability. We must not mix the two, because this one of the 18 million who get the grant, it's always been there every year. And every year, remember that there's sometimes an increase of about 10 Rand or 20 Rand or 30 Rand or 50 Rand to each. That one has been sustained since 1994, and we have to continue sustaining that, and we budget for that at all times. So it hasn't been disturbed in the since 1994. The one of the SRD, which is the 350 social relief of distress, let us also remember that that one is the one that maybe people can talk about its unsustainability on the basis that it is a new grant which was introduced because of COVID-19. All the other grants are the old grants that Treasury, Minister of Finance, without doubt, always knows that in our budget, this money has to be there, given to SASSA, who then has to distribute it. Now, the one of the child support grant, which is a top-up, even that one, Vuyo, is an old grant. It's not a new grant. What we have simply done is to make sure that we move from the 480 rand, add more to it as an addition of 240 to make sure that we cater for the fact that everything increases, from food products and all to transport and all that, it increases. And also, Vuyo, we are trying to encourage those people who are taking care of orphans to keep them at home and take care of them, the caregivers, instead of us taking these children and putting them in orphanages and all. It's better for these children to be growing up within a family environment. And we understood that that amount of money, which was 480 given to them, was really not adequate, so we needed to increase that. It's not a new grant, it is an old grant.
Now, speaking of caregivers, Minister, there was an interesting story out of Mpumalanga about a couple of weeks ago, where the court granted an order to stop the relocation of patients who are at a particular facility. What happened in a nutshell is that the care facility had apparently complained about the fact that the 36 or so disabled patients that were under their care had not received any increase to their subsidies of about 1,900 in about 14 years. Now, apparently after raising the issue with the department then threatened to remove the patients. AfriForum then took this case to court, saying it has shown that the government has no conscience, and so on and so forth. I don't know how sort of widespread this problem is, but is it something that is, in your radar? Because it would appear, certainly at face value, that, these people had a case to raise if indeed, this money, had not increased in 14 years. Because 14 years later, it no longer buys what it used to buy.
Yes, Vuyo, I would like to indicate that on a yearly basis, we spend up to almost 80.2 billion that we need to spend on supporting NPOs and NGOs who are catering for a variety of social work services that we need to give. And when you talk about 1,900, for instance, I might have to get the specification of this case that you are particularly talking about. We have to pay that amount of money per person in any institution. Even when you go to our orphanages, we pay a particular amount per person for the facilities. Sometimes you find that we pay that amount of money, and a lot of that money also goes to paying salaries of the people who are working there. Our take in it is that, yes, we need to do the best that we can increase in these facilities, but the facilities also have to comply. The facilities have to be accountable. The facilities must be up to standard of what is expected when a facility is keeping those number of people. But obviously, from a national point of view, it is the provinces, therefore our MECs and the Department of Social Development at provincial level who will help to make sure that they do an evaluation, they visit this facilitation, they make sure that the facilitation are up to scratch. And I agree with them from a point of view of money that is not increasing when everything is increasing. But again, we are constrained also because we have a budget, and sometimes we even ask some of these facilities to try and do fundraising where they possibly can, because there are many of these facilities across the country. We also have agreed as a department that we have to review our approach as a department to some of the support systems that we use for these facilities. Some facilities are better managed, some facilities are not so very well managed. It is about the monitoring and evaluation that the department needs to do but more has to be done by the provinces in making sure that they visit these facilities, and the facility managers also. They are supposed to communicate with the province, and if they're not getting any joy in their communication with the facility, they have to escalate their challenges to us. In some instances, we find it late as a department at National Development to realize that some of these facilities have not increased the amount of money that has to be given to them. But we give this money per person.
Well, speaking about facilities, I mean, a different issue that cropped up in the Western Cape. The Department of Social Development in that province last month issued a statement about illegal rehabilitation centers. Apparently, there are many of them in that province, and one would imagine it's not the only province with this kind of problem. They are exploiting clients. They are not registered. In certain instances, according to the department, they even I mean, some of these people who are running these centers are violating these people's human rights. Are you aware of this one?
Yeah, definitely. One of the reasons why we have a special program in the department of these facilities, or even NPOs, registering and ensuring that at all times we visit and check. Again, that's why I'm saying we are sitting at National doing the policy development and evaluation and all that. Provinces have to take responsibility. For instance, the Western Cape has to take responsibility of ensuring that there are no illegal rehabilitation centers, because National cannot be able to cover up the whole country. If we were to think about it, that would have to spend most of the time going around the provinces, MECs of provinces, HODs of provinces, monitoring and evaluation structures have to go and check on these centers to make sure that, one, they are properly registered, two, they are compliant with legislation itself. But more than just complying with legislation, it's humanity, Vuyo. It is about people who think they will take advantage of running centers where it's not about the people who they are accepting in the center. It is about them and what they have to make out of the center. That's why earlier on I spoke to you and I said it's a problem when people spend more money on their salaries and other perks rather than really servicing the people that they have in their centers. By the way, the Western Cape, even when it comes to the issue of disability, it's one of the things that I have just asked the department to check for me. Why is it that in terms of the disability grant, the Western Cape has the highest numbers of people with disability? When the figures are coming in, it means we and the MEC of the Western Cape must check why is it that the Western Cape has got so many people with disability? What is the cause of the highest number of disabilities in the whole country being in the Western Cape? Are there other means that we can do maybe to avoid or to reduce the numbers of people who have to be asking for this disability? Or is there something in the system that is not working well? Because remember, for the disability grants, for instance, people have to be signed off by doctors that they have a disability, they cannot work, and therefore they have to get this disability. Some of the work that needs to be done at the provincial level, we have to make sure that we ask the provinces to really step up in their system of ensuring they visit and make sure that people are not disadvantaged, whereas they are supposed to be benefiting from the government money, which, by the way, is taxpayers' money, which has to be given to these rehabilitation centers. It is up to the provinces to make sure that there are no illegal rehabilitation centers. Lastly, Vuyo, with regard to the rehabilitation centers, there are ones which are run by government, but there's also private rehabilitation centers.
Minister, I have so many issues to raise with you, but unfortunately, because of the glitches we're having earlier, I have now run out of time. But there's a couple of issues I just want to raise with you. I mean, even though we no longer have a great deal of time left. And one was a rather sad story in KwaZulu-Natal, where a baby was found abandoned, and next to her was a note allegedly written by the mother of the child. And it read in part, "You may be wondering why I dumped my baby. Don't wonder, just help her." Went on to say, "I've spoken twice to social workers, but they are delaying to assist. We can't even abort." And according to the MEC for Social Development in KZN, Nonhlanhla Khoza, there were many such incidents, or we're seeing numbers more and more of such unfortunate incidents. I don't know whether it also, or this raises the issue of the agility of the system as well. In other words, are our social workers able to make interventions and make them timelessly? Because, I mean, these babies are at risk, of what if they don't get found, or, by, people who are passers-by, before it's too late, before they die even. Someone like this, if indeed it's true that she went and sought help, but couldn't find it, in time, then decided to just abandon the baby. This has to be our system should be able to deal with these issues timelessly. I'm sure you'd agree on that.
I fully agree with you, Vuyo, but also remember the fact that we are engaging with Treasury in particular to increase the number of social workers, because social workers become overwhelmed. We don't have enough social workers employed, and yet we have trained social workers, but also some social workers have gone out of their way. People who are interested in social work have gone out to do the training. That's why we have now developed a new strategy of employment of social workers, where we're not only looking at the Department of Social Development for the employment of social workers. Our system will be agile if we have more social workers and I'm really grateful to this woman who did not do otherwise. In some instances, other women do drastic things to deal with an issue like this. She was able to take the child and leave a note that this is my frustration. It's lessons for us that we should enable the due processes, whatever the process she wanted, we should enable it so that it can be quick, so that the frustration of the mother who is unable to cater for this child, our system must be agile enough, and that's why we are calling on all those who have the capacity and capability of employing some of our social workers, or most of our social workers. Will be very grateful to get them employed, because this woman would not go, because you might find that she was going to one social worker who had to deal with a whole host of other people who have got other problems. Our society is full of a whole lot of social ills, and having more social workers on the ground will help the situation for you. Thank you very much.
Minister, before I leave you, there's a couple of tweets on the back of what you said right at the beginning. People asking questions. They are more or less similar, the questions that is. One says, please ask the minister, the toll-free number is not working, and the application for reconsideration, the process is not helpful. What can beneficiaries do to apply for reconsideration? Let's take a second one, which is also related. SASSA switchboard numbers is also not working. What are our SRD beneficiaries supposed to do? Let's take the last one, Minister. You can respond comprehensively. It says, Kules Mncwango says, the fact that there is no certain day that is specific for the 350 SRD grant presents wide variety of problems. Those of us who get it through the bank end up not getting the full amount because of bank charges. Your portal is bad. Minister?
Well, we have tried to make sure that people don't have to be paying. That's why we have to go into negotiations with the bank so that people don't have to pay the bank charges. Because honestly speaking, imagine how much money the banks have to make if people have to pay for the bank charges. So we've been trying to make sure that people don't pay for the charges. The dates, we are announcing the dates most of the time as to when. Remember in the past, we used to put up a list of the dates at the post office and everything. We changed that because we put SMSs on when people are supposed to go and get their money. As to the toll-free number, yes, I'm very much aware. Even the members of parliament have been bitterly complaining to me about the fact that the toll-free number, people call it and then they have to wait for a long time. We are doing our best to improve the system because this is technology that we need to improve. And I'm happy that when all is said and done, we've been forced to look at better technologies of solving this problem, including even the switchboard. Because I said to the department as well as SASSA, we cannot be using old age switchboards when in 2022 there's new technologies. So we're looking at improving that, not only because of the SRD 350, but because as a department and as SASSA, we are looking at automation so that people can be able to apply without having to travel long distances, getting to many taxis. SRD 350 has taught us that people are capable of making their application even on their cell phones. All we need to do is to make it easy for people because even the airtime and everything is very expensive for them.
Minister, let's leave it there for tonight. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Vuyo. Thank you for the opportunity.
Minister of Social Development on the back of several pronouncements that she made earlier today. Of course, took the opportunity to talk about a whole lot of other social development issues. Couldn't get anywhere near some of the issues I wanted to raise with her. Hopefully, we'll get another bite at it some other time. To this now, another leader has dumped the Democratic Alliance. Former KwaZulu-Natal leader Zwakele Mncwango is leaving his home of 22 years. Why? Well, he joins me on the line now. Mr. Mncwango, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Well, of course, I mean, you've been having conversations over the past couple of days about what actually broke the camel's back. But it's difficult to accept that, your decision is based on purely on what happened over the past couple of weeks.
Good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to viewers. It is true. The issues from me and the DA has been really escalating for a while. It's not a decision you can take overnight. I think for me, it's a question of trying to be patient, trying to engage internally, trying to say maybe things would get better. But as time goes by, we realize that nothing will get better. In fact, it's getting more worse. One have been seeing a lot of unfairness, basically in the organization, and I've been raising these issues internally. So anyone can come now and claim I've never raised these issues will be really being untruthful because all senior members of the DA, those who serve with me at FedEx, even at PEC at provincial level, they know I'm a person who speaks in meetings. I always speak. I don't wait for something to affect me directly, but I will always be the voice where I see that there's been unfair treatment to certain individuals or there is an issue around the culture we see over time now, the culture of fear in the organization that I felt, you know what, people can't have an opinion anymore. It became clear that there's only one person who can have an opinion and have a voice and can speak freely. That's only Helen Zille. So all of us were subjected to say, look, you can't say anything in the public space. When you speak internally, you get sidelined, you're censored on what you can say, what you can't say. So it became difficult over time. It can't be really decision overnight for you.
Well, before we get to this last straw in a minute, unpack that for us. What were these issues that you were raising? What did they have to do with, and how did you express your dissatisfaction about them?
Vuyo, I can name a few. Let me just maybe recent ones, not recent, but maybe 2 years ago. You know, I openly engaged with leadership. How I felt Musi was unfairly blamed for election results. I was open in those meetings to say I believe it's a collective decision, and decisions we've been taking were all part of FedEx, why one person must be blamed over elections. And the unfair treatment over John Moody, there was a case between John Moody and one other member, and John Moody was sidelined and be seen as the one who's a culprit, whereas other member was allowed to walk freely. And there was an unfair treatment over issue of Ghana, when Ghana made a statement during lockdown, and which I feel was really a freedom of speech. He made an opinion how he felt about army treating people in Soweto, but he was charged. You know, so there are many issues. I can also remember one issue that really broke my heart in a meeting of Federal Executive where we're discussing elections results. And in that meeting, Vuyo, and I raised those concerns in the meeting where Helen said in that meeting, and he can attest to this because he even sent an apology to me afterwards, because I raised a concern over what statement he made. It wasn't directed to me, but she said, we are not growing within black communities. Even though we have tried to have token leaders. I took offense of such a statement because I was one of the leaders who happened to be black, and for a leader who was chairing the meeting to say we've tried even using token leaders, I felt you were actually directing it. Even myself, I stood up at the meeting, I said, I will leave this meeting because I can't sit in a meeting where I'm being insulted with other black leaders. And it was other leaders who asked me to sit down, and I was being calmed down. And Helen sent an apology, even via SMS, apologizing over a statement. So it's been building up, Vuyo, even with a time where one of the members criticized and said some remarks about traditional attire. She is one member from KZN, a very senior member, who's a member of parliament, met another member at the airport and said, how do you guys support someone who wears animal skins? So that's offensive in an organization where diversity should be embraced, because the fact that I wear Ibeshu doesn't make me a different person, but it means I'm a proud person of being a Zulu nation. But then this organization should be the party that embraces diversity. It's part of its values. So I felt the party is drifting from its values. And I raised these issues internally, Vuyo. That is why many of you never knew about such statement made by her in the meeting, never knew about these issues, because I raised them internally. So anyone who can say I'm honoring now will be unfair.
How much responsibility do people like you, people like Musi, take for perhaps wittingly or not, but for perhaps sort of protecting or not really coming out on these issues, when perhaps for some of the people they were there glaringly, for all to see, but perhaps your presence or your continued stay in the party then played a big part in in these issues being hidden or never coming out in the open. But perhaps you should have been a lot more forthcoming, gone more, even more public about some of these issues, precisely because of our history.
True, Vuyo, but at times, you feel like things will get better because it was never like this before. Let's be honest, there was a time where really we felt the DA can build South Africa for all. And we were honest, and even when you campaign, you can feel that you can bring hope to our people because you feel the spirit in the meeting. But at a time, I don't know what happened. I think for the past 3 years to date, things changed, Vuyo, drastically, where really you find it very difficult to tolerate. Yes, you're quite correct, but you felt engaging internal about these issues, they would get better. But as time goes by, you realize they don't get better. For example, I resigned last week from legislature on Wednesday. I said, let me resign from legislature and give myself time to engage with leadership on these particular issues and then see whether we can improve or not. But unfortunately, on Friday, 3 days later, Helen Zille wrote me a letter censoring again, saying, please stop engaging on these issues. And she was even saying, I'm being unreasonable, disparaging towards the party, which I felt this is not really what I can say, because I was saying, let me give them a chance. She's not asking to engage with me on these issues. In fact, she's threatening me to terminate membership if I continue. So I said, let me just leave, let me just resign. Because what's the point of staying in an organization where the culture of having a different opinion, where you can't speak out how you feel? And I've been making an example about what's happening with SCAPE today. You've got a situation, Vuyo, where you've got a speaker who have been alleged of have done something wrong. And I strongly believe he must account for that. But where I feel the party have moved away from its values, you've got a situation where the party took documents of those allegations to the Hawks, which is fine, right platform. But on top of that, the party decided to prosecute Masizole internally using FLC processes. And on top of that, he is now subjected to the motion of confidence by his own organization. What do you call that? On a background, Vuyo, where you've got a deputy speaker who have been found guilty by an independent investigation, and the party is protecting that person, and the party is still willing to remove Masizole and appoint the same person to be the speaker, who was current deputy, having found guilty of wasteful expenditure and irregular expenditure. Now, how much more you can really talk about fair processes and treatment of people being fair?
Quick one, Mr. Mncwango. In their statement, the DA says you've resigned as a member of the provincial legislature, and maybe public comment while you're still a member of the DA. They say they understand you'll be taking up the position of Action SA chairperson in KZN, and you had been working on this for a very long time. Is that true?
Look, Vuyo, there are so many speculations about my move from now, and the DA also are part of those who are speculating, and it can't be true that I resigned just because I want to take a position from Action SA. Action SA is one of the organizations actually which are engaging me like any other parties, and I've got other conversations with other parties who still believe that I can contribute to the politics. And I'm of the view that there are also private sector and NGOs who are approaching me that they still require my leadership skills, and I'm open to engagement. Even yesterday, Mashaba did give me a call and say, can he come down for us to talk? I said, no, yes, okay, we can come, we can talk. So basically, I'm still open for discussion, but I will only join the party, Vuyo, that's aligned to my values, that I believe the values they share with me are values to build South Africa and not divide our country along racial lines.
Mr. Mncwango, let's leave it there for this evening. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vuyo.
Mncwango, of course, has resigned as a member of the Democratic Alliance, but also as its whip in the provincial legislature. Listening in to that conversation is Professor Thea Venter, who is an analyst based at the University of Johannesburg. Prof, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. What do you make of this Zwakele Mncwango's resignation coming as it does? I mean, on the back of many other, particularly black leaders who have left the official opposition over the last few years?
Yeah, well, the ANC, the DA, has got a problem in that, beginning with people like Mmusi Maimane, Herman Mashaba, and the rest. And but I think one must have the perspective that it's not only the DA that has these kind of problems at the moment. If we look at the party political system, we're in a process of deep rearrangement.
I don't know what's happening with your line, Prof. Hopefully you can still hear me. Prof, can you hear me? Okay. We seem to have lost Professor Thea Venter there, who was trying to make sense of this latest development. Of course, as you heard him say, it's not only the DA that is currently going through this kind of thing. Prof, I hope we have you back, but they may not be the only party experiencing this sort of problem, as you say, but do you think they will survive this, given the caliber of leaders who have left them in the last few years? No. Okay, we're not winning with this line. Professor Theo Venter is the professor in practice, School of Public Management, Governance and Public Policy at the University of Johannesburg. Unfortunately, we're going to have to abandon that interview. Hopefully, we will be able to raise the many issues that this particular incident and those that before it are raising about the state of the Democratic Alliance in particular, but perhaps the state of politics in our country more broadly, and what it would mean for a party which is the second biggest political party in the country if it goes as many people are predicting, saying there is no way a party like this can actually survive what we have been seeing. Number of high-profile leaders leaving the Democratic Alliance. But unfortunately, we're going to leave it there tonight. Hopefully, we'll be able to pick up on these issues at a later stage. Thank you very much for watching. Do join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Have a good night.